In professional sports, there are two ways to declare a champion. Either you give it to the team with the most points or best record at the end of the season, as is the case with most association football and racing leagues, or you have a postseason tournament to declare a champion, as is the case with most other sports. Both systems have their flaws. Some see the former as anticlimactic, like with Liverpool running away with a Premier League title in 2025, and some see the latter as illegitimate, as the best regular season team could be bounced by a team who weren't anywhere near them in the standings. In my personal view, playoff systems are superior, at least in team sports, mainly because it allows a league to show off the best their product has to offer and turn their fan bases and rivalries up to 11. There is arguably no better time to market your product and drum up storylines and excitement. However, that only works if the system is done correctly. The NHL runs their playoffs as essentially a free-for-all. The better team gets a weaker opponent, but it's still on the better team to beat that opponent in a fair fight. This creates the sort of controlled chaos that some people deem unfair, but that's usually because their team choked against a weaker opponent. Some leagues, like the NFL, MLB, and Japan's NPB, reward their first-place teams with an advantage. Not only does this reward regular season performance, but it also makes it so that if a worse team makes a deep run to the finals, they earn it. Then there is NBA and the MLS, who conduct play-in tournaments and wildcard games that make it so 2/3 of their league makes the playoffs, trivializing them and rewarding mediocrity to chase TV ratings. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about a playoff format so skewed and busted that it's almost as if their champion is predetermined. One so predictable that fans openly question why they even do it, and one with a solution so blindingly simple it shockingly haven't done it. I'm talking about the gauntlet bracket of the KBO League, the worst playoff system in major team sports. But to see how we got here, we have to do some history. When the KBO was founded in 1982, it had one factor that made it stand out from other baseball leagues in the world. It was a one-league structure with no conferences or divisions. This isn't all that unexpected. After all, there were only 6 teams in the league when it was founded, and it wasn't all that unprecedented either. Prior to becoming 2 league organizations, Major League Baseball and Nippon Professional Baseball both had periods in which they were one-league structures. However, what made the KBO different from these other leagues is that they still wanted a championship series. The NL of the 1890s and the JPBL of the 1930s and 40s were one-league structures that did what most one-league structures without conferences do. The team with the best record at the end of the season is deemed champion. But that simply wouldn't do for the newly founded KBO. The KBO wanted a Korean series, but with only 6 founding teams, how would you go about that? Well, that's simple. The season would essentially be split into 2 halves. The winner of the first half of the season and the winner of the second half of the season would face off in the Korean series at the end of the year. Now, this wasn't an entirely new system. NPB's Pacific League was using it as a playoff system to determine which of their number made the Japan series, and had been for about a decade at that point. But that doesn't mean it's a good system. That had been proven almost immediately and controversially when the Nankai Hawks won the first half of the 1973 Pacific League season and immediately took their foot off the gas. The second half champion Hankyu Braves finished with the best record in the PL, and the Lotte Orions, who finished second in both halves, would miss the playoffs. The Hawks would then beat the Braves in the PL playoffs to become the worst on-paper team to make the Japan series. A Japan series they, unsurprisingly, lost. The next year saw the Hankyu Braves do almost the exact same thing, but this time the Orions were able to win the second half and then ride that momentum to sweep the Braves in the playoffs. But 1975 was the most egregious, as the Hankyu Braves won the first half, then had the worst record in the second half. Not only was their appearance in the PL playoffs totally undeserved, but they actually ended up winning the whole damn thing that year, by beating the Kintetsu Buffaloes in the playoffs and the Hiroshima Carp in the Japan series. And if that wasn't bad enough, the Orions would win the second half in 1977 after finishing 5th in the first half, leapfrogging the Nankai Hawks to make the playoffs. But at least they had the common courtesy to lose to the Braves. Hell, the year before the KBO was founded, the Nippon Ham Fighters went on a miracle second half run to make the playoffs, leapfrogging the Braves. But at least they finished first overall. Now, if it wasn't clear the point I was trying to get across, this system was flawed. The KBO knew it was flawed, and they adopted it anyways. It would almost immediately show its flaws. While the top two regular season teams would make the Korean Series in 1982 and 1983, 1984 would see a Korean Series played between the 2nd overall Samsung Lions and the 4th overall Lotte Giants. There were only 6 teams in the league. While that Korean Series is remembered today as a classic, it's also probably the least legitimate championship I have ever seen. The OB Bears were the best team in the regular season and got nothing for it. How could this get worse? Well, we now come to the question of what happens when a team wins both halves. In the Pacific League, this was simple, as the teams were not competing for the Japan Series, but just to make the Japan Series. So if a team won both halves, they automatically made it. That doesn't exactly work if teams are working towards a berth in the finals, so KBO teams that had won the first half were not just encouraged, but actively pressured to take their foot off the gas. The OB Bears won the first half of their inaugural season, but allowed the Samsung Lions to win the second half so there would actually be a Korean Series. The Haitai Tigers finished first in the first half in 1983 and fourth in the second half. The farce that was the 1984 KBO season was buoyed by the Samsung Lions finishing first in the first half and fifth in the second half. But after becoming the first team to lose 2 Korean Series, Samsung decided they weren't going to lay off. They won both halves in 1985, taking the Korean Series by default. To this day, it is still one of the most utterly dominant seasons in professional baseball. The second place Lotte Giants finished 18.5 games back. So it was clear that the system needed to be rejigged, and the KBO would do it by stating that if a team won both halves, they would make the Korean Series, and the 2 teams that finished second in both halves would play a playoff series to determine who would face them. Also, if a team finished top 2 in both halves, they would automatically make the Korean Series. That meant that if a team finished second in both halves, the teams that won both halves would have to play each other for the right to make the Korean Series, which is exactly what happened in 1986. And if the same teams finished first and second in both halves, they would just play each other in the Korean Series. This system, unsurprisingly, only lasted 3 years. Was it better than the original? Yes, but it didn't shake the core flaws of the original, namely that splitting a season into 2 halves didn't really accomplish anything. In fact, it made the product worse. And that sentiment would be proven true, as all 3 years saw a team get screwed. In 1986, the NBC Blue Dragons finished third, but missed the playoffs in favor of the 4th place OB Bears, who'd won the first half. In 1987, the Bears would finish second in the first half and leapfrog the Giants. And in 1988, the Giants would again be leapfrogged, this time by the Samsung Lions. So, for 1989, the KBO would adopt the playoff system they still use to this very day. The Gauntlet Bracket. 4th place third, winner plays second, winner of that makes the Korean Series to play the 1st place team. In 2015, they would expand to add a series where the 5th place team would play the 4th place team, with the winner moving up the gauntlet. There was also a 6-year period from 1993 until 1998 where the 4th place team was only allowed into the playoffs if they finished within 3 games of the 3rd place team, but that was scrapped after the 4th place team still qualified in 5 of those 6 years anyway. On paper, this seems like an elegant solution to a problem, one that rewards regular season performance while giving a path for teams who finished lower down the order to make the final. And it might seem like that, but in reality it creates arguably the most boring, predictable, and pointless championship finals anywhere in the world. Let's start with the wildcard. In 10 attempts, the 5th place team has only won the round once, and that was in 2024. While the semi-playoff and playoff rounds have been far more competitive, once it gets to the Korean Series, it is a wash. In the 34 years the KBO playoffs have used this format, the regular season champion has won the Korean Series 29 times. The only times they failed to win were 1989, 1992, 2001, 2015, and 2018. In the 2000s, the Korean Series was essentially predestined. Hell, the series itself has only gone to 7 games 4 times in that span: 1995, 2003, 2009, and 2013. And yes, I'm ignoring 2004, in which 9 games were played in the Korean Series thanks to there being 3 ties, because for all intents and purposes, the Hyundai Unicorns won that series in 6, 4 games to 2. Why is it like this? Are the first place teams just that much better than everyone else? In some cases they are, but not most of the time. See, the Korean Series is so uncompetitive precisely because the semi-playoffs and the playoffs are so competitive. In both cases, the team with the worst regular season record has won them 16 times out of 34. These are knock-down, drag-out fights that produce some of the most exciting and hard-fought baseball you'll ever see. But it also means that the teams that make it out of this gauntlet are usually absolutely exhausted and are facing a team that's been able to rest their best players for 2 weeks. It's like running into a brick wall. But what's wrong with that, I hear you cry? Isn't the whole point of the Korean series to show off who's the best team in Korea? To which I say, yes, but they should have to earn it, and you earn it by facing a team on equal terms. When the second best team in the KBO has only won the Korean series twice in this format, something is wrong with the format. Perhaps what makes this even more annoying is that the KBO had a solution, but they scrapped it. In 1999 and 2000, the KBO was split into 2 divisions of 4 teams. These divisions were called the Magic Division and the Dream Division, because East Asia, and they essentially made the KBO much more streamlined. The playoff system worked like this. The second place team in one division would play the first place team in the other in a playoff series, and the winner of that would make the Korean series. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. However, it was scrapped after the 2000 season because the Samsung Lions, who'd finished 3rd in the Dream Division, had a better record than the LG Twins, who finished 1st in the Magic Division. While the Lions were allowed into the playoffs anyways thanks to a rule that stated that if the 3rd place team in one division was better than the 2nd place team in the other, they would make the playoffs, it just ended up putting a wrench in the whole thing, making it easier for the league to smother the format in the cradle. And it's a damn shame they did. Unsurprisingly, my proposal to fix this broken KBO playoff system would be to bring the divisions back. Except instead of arbitrarily splitting the teams like the first time, there'd be some thought put into it. The Doosan Bears, LG Twins, and Kiwoom Heroes play in Seoul proper, the SSG Landers play in Incheon, and the KT Wiz play in Suwon, both of which are part of the greater Seoul area. This is one division. Let's call it the new Magic Division. The other 5 teams that are spread out across the country will form the new Dream Division. For a playoff system, they could either borrow the system from the 1999 and 2000 years, ensuring that you get some legendary rivalry matchups in the Korean series, or borrow from the NPB system in which the first place team gets a bye and plays the winner of 2 and 3. While this does mean that 60% of the teams make the playoffs, given how the system is played out in the 20 years NPB has used it, you really don't have to worry too much about the 3rd place team making the finals. But that 3rd place team also has a fighting chance in the finals, as in the 3 times a 3rd place team has made the finals in NPB, they've won it twice. The main drawback of this format is there's now no chance of legendary rivalry matchups in the Korean series, such as Lions Tigers and Bears Twins. But to that I say, look at MLB and NPB. Just because the Yankees and Red Sox are playing in the ALDS and not the World Series, it doesn't make those series any less intense. Same goes for a Giants-Tigers CLCS matchup. The intensity is there and will shine more of a spotlight on the lower levels of the playoffs, which are already the best part of the KBO playoffs. Cynically, this also pretty much guarantees that a team from Seoul, the KBO's biggest market, makes an appearance in the Korean series. But that can also foster rivalries in its own way, feeding into the us versus Seoul mentality that is already held by many Koreans who don't live in the capital. Now, do I think this will happen? No, I really don't. The fact that this system has been around for 34 of the last 36 years speaks to a lack of appetite for change, and the KBO seems happy with the current format, even if it makes what should be their biggest moment of the year a drawn-out formality. This video was basically made as a way for me to vent my frustrations at the system, give you a history lesson on why it exists, and offer my 2 cents on how to fix it. But that being said, I do hope it changes at some point.
달려가자 롯데자